Hey guys, it's Babon and I'm back with another video, and in this one I want to talk about iteration. This is one I've drawn in stream recently of one of my OCs that I use for study. This video and the art itself was posted early on the Patreon. This one will also link in slightly to the last two videos that I posted, where one was about different parts of art block that you might experience, and the other one was about keeping momentum with art and keeping doing stuff. I will put links to those up in the top corner and also down in the description if you'd like to check those out. So, getting into this, what I mean when I say iteration is that you're going to redraw something again and again, almost like you're doing concept art to try and refine it into exactly how you want it to be. And that might not be something that you'll get straight away with the first couple of sketches, but the more you draw, the more you'll figure out what it needs to look like and what you enjoy. And since I've been working on Skelby more, I thought it would be fun to include some of the variations that she's gone through and how she's developing and what direction it's going in as an example. In my other video where I'm talking about motivation, one of the things I mentioned was that you want some art buddies to hang around with so that you can draw together and come up with ideas and play with ideas, bounce ideas off of each other. The first time I drew her as a design was in a draw pile with other people where we were doodling stuff. I don't remember what, or if it was like relevant, but this is what she looked like initially. And I thought that was maybe a cool concept, and that she would be difficult to draw if I was to add more detail, and that from that she could be something I use for study, for skeletal anatomy, and also for different effects, because she's glowy and she's got the skin tones, she's got the skeleton, and also maybe clothes, like fabric clothes. So I'm taking my own advice from that last video where I'm drawing with other people to try and mess about and come up with these ideas. And then I'm finding ways to apply it, and I regularly talk about how I will note down things that I want to study and then try and compile them into something that I can work on that is gonna make me work on those things specifically. So this joins together working on skeletal anatomy, she joins together working on effects like the glow. Another thing that I mentioned in that other video is looking backwards to look forwards and reviewing some of your influences and the direction that you want to be going in, or the trajectory that you may be going in when taking those influences into account. So I used to draw a lot of weird monsters at a certain time. I had a phase where I drew lots of weird monsters, and I've always wanted to lean more into gore, I suppose, like this. So the first one that I drew was a little test of that, where it's still kind of cartoony and silly, but now that I'm going through and iterating, I'm starting to get into where it's just about pushed enough to where I want it to be. So by adding all those things up from the suggestions I made in my other video and putting them together, making them work for me, I'm starting to get somewhere with this concept. And where I mentioned also that I will talk with other people about this, where I stream these, people were talking to me about like, oh, do you have concepts for her in terms of what's the lore around her? Does she have this? Does she do that? And that's starting to make me think as well, because people are interacting with my idea and I'm getting to interact with them. So where I mentioned it being a big pot that I'm throwing things into earlier with these ideas, every time I draw her and I show her publicly or people see me drawing her, they naturally want to ask questions and be like, oh, what are you doing here? Why is this like it is? What does she do? So it's outside of my head at that point, and other people are interacting and giving me more ideas or things to think about. Some of the other ones I've drawn over are this little animation I've got over on the right. I don't tend to do a lot of animation, but I did a lot of the process of this one in Patreon streams. And then also the one on the left, which I have a video of actually, because I drew a big sheet of references of her to practice skeletons, which, as I say, is kind of what she ended up being, a study character. So I will put a link to that video as well. I drew about 3 sheets of them with 4 each, I think, which was quite difficult, but like I say, that's the point. Thankfully, also, she is see-through, so she's not particularly offensive to draw nippy. She is quite palatable as a study character. I think she's maybe worse in the clothes because of what they are. Through these iterations and different styles that I'm using as well, I'm starting to narrow down how I want the values to look, because she's a bit more troublesome to get the values correct on, so that the glow is clearly readable, but you can see the structure of the bones underneath. So that's helped me work out what the base looks like, and that I can use that to study, but then I can start developing her more into a character that's got more personality, so she's not just, like, very obviously a blank canvas to study with. So this is where I'm starting to lean into giving her clothes. So I did a whole bunch of sketches for these, and this is just one of them. I have another big set of sketches in a sheet that I want to work on intermittently so that I can get more of these done and play with the concept more. One of the things people were suggesting in the stream, I can't remember who said it, someone said roadkill bikini, and I am very interested in that idea. I think that would be very funny. Also, now that I have this concept down and I'm starting to play with the fashion costume designs, I suppose, more, it's giving me more ideas for the world to build around her. I'm starting to come up with little kind of small couple of frame comic ideas that I would like to do. So the next thing I want to lean into is simplifying her down into a format that will work with that and also work with these designs that I've got going. I've got some very loose early sketches of simplifying her down for a format that will work in small comics like that here. I'm going to work on more and then post them on the Patreon and maybe some of them public. I do have more stylistic development content and videos on the Patreon. So she is coming from some of that and things that I've drawn there, and trying to simplify that style enough that it will work in a comic context. Also, I made my PNG tuber or hoodie to go along with her, since we're leaning that way anyway. I hope you like it. Tell me what you think about it. Tell me how you think I could make that worse. Actually, that is what I would really like to hear. Or actually, leave me a comment on how she could be worse and how mine could be worse also. Both of them. That is an overview of the iteration process that I've got so far. Next, what I want to do is go and apply it to other characters that can exist around her, because as I'm getting these questions from people, it's making me think, okay, she needs some kind of context to be inside of. Another way you could think of this iteration process, especially where you have other people involved or you're showing things publicly so that you can get input and reactions from people, is when you have a small puppy, you need to introduce it to people and other dogs so that you socialize it. It can get feedback and understand how to react in different situations. And it's interesting to think of this the same way. So I'm exposing my idea to people's opinions and they can give me feedback and I can adjust it depending on how I want it to be in the end. And I'm also taking those cues, as I mentioned earlier, by looking into what I was interested in the past, drawing like weird monsters and stuff, and wanting to draw gore and lean into that and learn more about how to render that sort of thing. And all that is coming together to inform me of the direction that I can go to next. So adding all those points up shows me a map for where I'm going to be going forwards as things develop. So all these new things that I know now, like I have comic ideas, I've got more ideas people have been giving me for other outfits she could have, and that's a result of me sharing my process for these and streaming them or drawing them with people in draw piles so that we can all interact and come up with ideas. It's really fun to do this with other people and their ideas as well. Going forward, I'm going to use that same process of input from other people and input from myself based on the things I mentioned in my art motivation video. And that will apply going forward to the world building as well. So I plan to do more of her on stream because I'm really enjoying hearing what people have to say and questions I have to ask about her, because it's things that I'm not really thinking about, where she was initially something I was using to study with. But there's definitely more potential there. In my motivation video, one of the things I mention also is that you should go scrumping in the idea orchard, which is to say you should go and find media that is similar to what you are aiming for or want to do so that you stay interested in it and see how other people are dealing with it as well. So if anyone has anything that my girly here reminds you of, please share with me. I would love to hear about it. I do want to talk about also how this relates to the different stages of making something, which I talked about in the art block video that I mentioned. I'll link that again. In that video, I mentioned the different phases of creating something and where you can have art block appear and why it appears at certain stages and why it appears the way it does. But the main phases that I blocked out are the play phase at the start, where you're not really thinking too hard about it, you're just messing about and seeing where the idea goes. Then you go to testing it, where you try and draw it more technically. The performance phase, where you actually get into the drawing and you're planning to complete it. Then the completion phase, and then the reflection phase at the end. When we weigh that against the process I'm talking about here, where I am interacting with people and they're interacting with me and the concept that I have, I'm noticing that instead of just going through that phase and thinking, oh, well, I've completed this version of it and now it's finished, I'm being invited back to the early stages of that. And it's making me think again and want to play with different ideas as people are suggesting them and asking about it. So that ties back in to the motivation also, where you're sharing your ideas with people and you're invited back into that play phase where people are throwing ideas out and messing about and making jokes about it, which is honestly where a lot of ideas come from. I can't remember which video I mentioned it in, but usually when you have an interesting idea, it will start off as a silly joke, and then the more effort you put into it, you can usually condense it and refine it into something that is cool. Ideas are cheap, they're easy to come up with. People joke about all sorts of things that you can get ideas from and run with. The only thing that separates that is you actually putting the time in and spending the time to run through the rest of those processes to make something complete that you can show from those ideas. And that's the goal, right? Because you want to make something. I assume you want to draw stuff if you're watching me. You want to come up with cool ideas and draw them and make them a thing. I guess what I'm saying is you've got to take your OCs to the dog park and you've got to socialize them with other people and other dogs so that they grow up normal. That's what you got to take your OCs down to the dog park, chat. With that full process that I run through of the 5 separate stages too, where it's bookended by play and reflect, those are the ones where you can get other people more involved, but where it's the test, performance, and complete in the middle, that is all down to you because that's where you need to use your own skills and learn things to realize it. But where you have those at the start and the end, it seems to be very easy to link them up and have other people involved to make you more motivated to keep going, where I'm saying they're going to share ideas with you. If you show them stuff, they'll ask questions and be like, oh, what are you doing? So it seems to help to have other people stitch those 2 parts of that loop together so that you get a whole circle and it doesn't just stop once you get to the end and you're stuck thinking about it yourself. Ultimately, it does come down to you wanting to put the effort in and actually doing that, though. I'm pulling through with these ideas and making something from them. So I'm hoping going forward that I can make even just silly little comics with her, and if that spins out into something else, then that's fine. Or if it doesn't, it's fine, because initially she was just a silly drawing, and it's cool that anything else has come from her, and, you know, she's something I can use to study. If any of you have similar things where you've had ideas that have spiraled off into something by going through this process and kind of building on it and sharing with people, I would like to hear about that as well. Is there anything that started off as just a little sketch and then developed into more, whether it's like OCs or a concept in general? Let's talk about the painting a little bit also, because I wanted to initially do this quite simply because it is a lot to render, but I ended up doing more than I probably should have because I quite like rendering the skin, and if you don't render it all the way, it tends to not really carry very well, especially when that's kind of the point of it. She needs to look fleshy and uncomfortable and there be a little bit too much detail. I really think the freckles did the job though. With the skeleton too, I've mentioned that I tend to use a site called Sketchfab a lot, and if you search for scans of things there are a lot of museums that will have scans of exhibits that they have, so they'll have scans of different animal skeletons and skulls, and sometimes you get human ones as well. I prefer to use those if I can because they're more accurate than ones that people have sculpted generally. So I've been keeping those out the side of the canvas so you can't see them in this time lapse because it's only recording my Clip Studio Paint window. But I did have those off to the side, and in Sketchfab you can rotate that 3D scan. I used one for the dog also because the dog skeleton was particularly awkward. I do have a video on Patreon as well, where I'm learning about drawing dogs and dog skeletons and kind of improving that, where I go into more detail with the anatomy too. But this little guy is just the skeleton, so I only needed that. I will do a video where I go over some other websites that I use as well for reference in general, but that is one of the main ones, especially for awkward things like skeletons. But yeah, like I say, I will be drawing more of these. I have a big sheet. You can probably go and see some of the streams that I did these on, actually, if you would like to spend a bit longer watching them, hang out on the stream, see what people were saying about this design, what ideas they had. I will put a link to my stream playlist now and also in the description. Another thing, actually, that I mentioned in my art motivation video was that you should introduce accountability so that you are more inclined to complete your projects. So that's something like hanging about with people that are doing the same thing so that you are then also interested in doing the same thing going forward. You're more motivated because you see other people doing it. You start to understand the way that they go about things, and it makes it easier and less intimidating for you to go forward and commit the effort and the time to a project. And then that links back in again with streaming it and showing other people. They can give their input and it all loops together again. I'm gonna have to do that if I start making small comics of her as well, by probably committing to a schedule and creating a backlog, which shouldn't be too much trouble because I have done that before. Back to the painting that I'm doing also, you can see around the rib cage, let's say, and a bit lower down. I'm trying to balance out my values, so I'm learning a bit more by rendering her in this way. As I simplify it down, I think I'll have to adjust the style to it and maybe just draw her in flat colors if I want to keep it very simple, a couple of frames of comic. But we will see. It's nice to do big illustrative pieces like this because, like I say, I don't think the concept carries as well with the skin not being rendered in something like this. I had initially planned to just render it a little bit, but the skin tones were not picking up at all. It looked very flat and kind of like Play-Doh. If you don't get all those skin colors in and the subsurface scattering, it just does not look realistic. It looks really flat and gummy. There's no sort of transparency to the top layer of the skin, which is what I was trying to catch. I kind of want to try another one where I can see if, maybe if I drew her in the dark so that you could see that light coming through the skin clothes, but it's like subsurface scattering kind of red, like when you put your hand up to the sun and you can see where it glows. That would be pretty cool, especially if it was a big dress and you could see her silhouette through it, but in that glow. That would be really cool. See, I'm coming up with ideas now just talking to myself for the video. I think that is one I will have to try going forward though. I was thinking about it doing this, but for the sake of rendering the skin and just getting a nice rendered piece out where you could see the different textures and the glow completely separate, I wanted to keep it quite flat and not fight with that, where there would be one light source coming from through, like behind, and then also the one that's just hitting straight on. I didn't want to fight with that, so I kept it simple. I'm also going to have to lean, I think, into more textures where I'm drawing all this kind of chum down the bottom. I think I did okay on that. I'm going to probably look at some better references and see if I can mimic them to test out on it. We'll have to do some like quicker sketches, I think, just to get them out rather than spending too long like I did on this one, which is a bad habit. She also leaves a trail behind her. That was what one of my comic ideas was going to be, is that everywhere she goes it's a red carpet event because she just leaves that smear behind wherever she goes. I hope other people find this character entertaining. I do. Okay. Anyway, there we are. There is almost the complete illustration of her. Like I say, I've got sort of better quality images of her on Patreon, where it's a bit more zoomed in. You can see the detail in her face. But I will be posting her public once she's been on Patreon for a little while. But I do have more illustrations of her that are just on there that I haven't posted anywhere either, where I've developed her. And there's also the stylistic development tutorial that I have where I did a lot of sketches of her because she's got some cool shapes. Anyway, there she is. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped. If it did, give us a like, share if you think it'll help someone else, and subscribe for new videos when I have them. You can subscribe to the Patreon if you would like to see these videos early and also get exclusive tutorials. I also have a Patreon Discord where we've been talking, and I do Patreon exclusive streams, and sometimes we draw in magma draw piles together, so I will be doing similar stuff and maybe drawing her in them or other characters or coming up with more silly ideas, so it loops right back into that cycle I was talking about. Yeah, thanks for watching. Goodbye!